My name's Claire. I'm 62. I'm a grandmother and I've been taking Effexor for 17 years.
Why were you first prescribed an antidepressant?
When I was 45, I was working full-time. I was bringing up 2 boys. I was also helping run a business, trying to do way too much. I'm also, I think, a workaholic, and I started getting very tired, very flat, lacking motivation. Everything became a huge effort, and I thought there was something wrong. So I went off to the doctor. He decided that I was suffering from depression and that I needed an antidepressant.
How did the antidepressant make you feel?
I started feeling numb, and that feeling stayed with me. I was still feeling flat. My GP then sent me off to a psychiatrist who doubled the dose, and a month after that doubled the dose again. So I was up to 375 milligrams, and I felt like I was just like a robot. I was very emotionally numb, but I was able to function, and therefore felt like it was doing its job, and I just kept going and going. And we managed to drop my dose down by half about 6 months later, and I still had the same emotional blunting, but again was still able to function. So I stayed on that 150 milligrams for around about 2 or 3 years. Then I started wondering if I really needed it. We dropped the dose down to 75, and I kept on with that for another year or so. I basically had no ability to dream about goals. I had no ability to do anything other than function. I lost the highs in my life, the exciting times. I look back and I also didn't realise, but I lost my memories of that time. There's great chunks of my life that are missing because I guess I was just so numb, and that's really sad.
What has your experience been when you came off or reduced the dose of the antidepressant?
When I reduced the dose, having been on very high doses, I didn't notice really any change. So I managed to go from 375 milligrams down to 150, really without any problem. It was similar getting from 150 to 75. However, when my doctor suggested, that I try coming off it, he suggested just halving the dose from 75 to 375, having that for basically a month and then stopping. And all hell broke loose. I have never experienced the terror, the extreme physical and mental upheaval that I went through. I was unable to eat. I would wake up just on dawn every day with the most upset tummy, having to rush to the toilet. I would be shaking in fear, totally unable to understand what the hell was happening. I couldn't sit still. I could sip watered down apple juice, and in the evening, if I was lucky, a very, very small bowl of rice or half a mashed banana. And this went on for weeks. I thought I was terminally ill. And back to the doctor, he basically decided that I had a chemical imbalance and that I needed this drug and that I would be on it for life. He immediately put me onto 75 milligrams, and 2 weeks later I was a little bit better, but still living in absolute hell. So he doubled the dose to 150. Within a few weeks, I had settled and was back to being an emotionally numb robot. It was such a frightening experience. I honestly feel like it left me with PTSD. To this day, I am absolutely anxious, worried, frightened that I may have to go through those extreme feelings again. It was horrendous. I was really lucky that I managed to stabilise. I stayed on 150 for about a year and managed to get down to 75 and stayed there basically for another near on decade.
How has antidepressant withdrawal impacted your life as a whole?
I think the antidepressant has affected my life in more ways than I like to admit. I guess being an emotional robot, I became quite withdrawn. I stopped socialising. I lost my joy of life, but I also lost the flat, demotivating side as well. I basically had a very limited range of emotion. The fear of going through that terror again has kept me on the drug for way longer than I should have been on it. And being told that you have a chemical imbalance and that you need the drug for life leaves you doubting yourself that you are able to function like other people. I started doubting my own sense of self. I don't like that I'm missing 17 odd years of my life. I get the odd glimpse of memories coming through now. So I guess my subconscious mind was videoing it, but I wasn't reacting to it. And it's very, very foggy. I feel like that has been taken from me and that I will never get it back. I don't think I have been the partner that I should be. I don't think I have been the mother that I should be. It just leaves me questioning everything about myself, about society. It leaves me angry that these drugs are given to us and we are assuming that the medical profession are educated and are giving these drugs to us in our best interests. I doubt that completely, and I've become extremely cynical about any pharmaceutical drugs and cynical about the medical profession as a whole, because I just wonder what it's all based on and why people like me have had to suffer and are still suffering because somebody comes up with a chemical in a lab. They test for a few weeks, maybe a month or so, and then hand out like lollies.
What did you need from health services that you did not receive?
I think I totally lacked support from my GP. There was no empathy. There was no questions about why I wasn't coping with what I was doing and the amount that I was taking on. There was no suggestion of any alternative therapy such as counselling. There was no discussion about long-term dangers. There was no discussion about side effects. There was just nothing. And I had assumed in my ignorance as a patient back then that the medical profession were educated and were all-knowing about these drugs, and that I assumed that there were steps in place to avoid problems down the track. So we, as a society, had gone through, say, the thalidomide drug issue, which was awful. And I guess I hoped that society had learned its lesson, that they knew what these drugs did, they knew how they worked, they knew how they affected us long term, and that they were safe. None of this was ever discussed. There was no mention of the fact that they don't know how these drugs work. They certainly didn't know long-term effects. And all that should have been explained so that I could have made an informed decision on my treatment. And there was none.
What did you do and where did you go for support?
When I when I decided I wanted to come off this drug, that I didn't want to be emotionally numb anymore. I missed the exhilarating happiness of being in nature, enjoying things. And I knew it was the drug that was stopping me feeling that. So at this stage, the internet was really coming to the fore. I started looking online for some sort of support as to why I felt like I did. Why did I have this chemical imbalance? Why did I need this drug for life? Why did I not need it when I was a child or an adolescent? Why did I suddenly need it in my 40s? And it led me to some peer support groups, and it started opening my eyes to the fact that it wasn't that I had a chemical imbalance. It was that I was chemically dependent on this drug, and that the only way I could come off it would be slowly and trying to avoid withdrawals, and hopefully giving not just my brain but my whole body time to heal and recover in between tapering and dropping again. So I have been doing it as slowly as I can. I still have support online. I have changed my GP, and the new GP, whilst she really doesn't know about all the research, latest research, she is prepared to support me in opening my capsules and counting beads, and removing beads. I'm just going to have to take it slowly, bit by bit, and I'm having to educate the doctor, which just should never happen. The patient is not there to educate the doctor. The only support, proper support and understanding I'm getting is online, and I'm hoping that the medical professions start realising where they've gone wrong and how to avoid people having to suffer the hideous withdrawal symptoms that just leave you shattered as a person.